Hey guys, so we're going to work on text wrapping around art today. This is a super important skill. Right now you can see the art is just over the text, so it's like blocking some of the words, not what we want obviously. Generally having the text stop, clicked the wrong button. Generally having the text just stop before the art is quite ugly. That does not look good. What we want is for the text to kind of flow around the art, but not be cut off by the art. So, how do we do this? You click on the art, then there are a couple ways to do it. I think it's Command Option W on a Mac. I believe it is Control Alt W on Windows, but I could be wrong. Or you can kind of go up to the top right here, hit Window, and then Text Wrap, and this should pop up. What you want to click is the third one over with the circle that's surrounded by text. Obviously not what we want. How are we going to fix this? We're going to go down to Contour Types. And hit Select Subject. This is some InDesign magic right here. It automatically detects the edges and it kind of selects it for you. Select Subject doesn't always work. I think Alpha Channel tends to work well too. I'm not really clear on what the difference is, but I think they're both good, and if one doesn't work, you can always try the other. Now, you can see the text is wrapped pretty close at the moment around this art. You can go here to change that. I normally like 1p0. Although, whatever, 0p10, 1p2, depending on what exactly it is, all works. So you can see that was just a really easy, simple way to do it, and it's automatically switched me over to our direct selection tool. That's not what I want, because I want to move the art around, so I'm going to go back to the regular selection tool. I think I want to move this more down into the corner. You can see text wrapping kind of sometimes does weird things to the words. This is just lorem ipsum filler text, but you can see that the words are kind of cut off, letters are stretched, so maybe I'll try moving it over to the side, and then you do some fussing to make sure that the letters aren't doing really weird and annoying things. Like you can see this ER right at the bottom is kind of gross looking. I'm very picky about this, so is Annika, so you're probably going to have to spend a little bit of time trying to make sure that words aren't looking really weird, because we don't want to hamper readability. Design is important, but it's equally important that we're able to read the text that our writers spend so long working on. So that's kind of a really, really basic way to do it, without explaining a lot of kind of what's going on and the more manual ways to do it. I'm going to get a little bit into that right now. If you see right here how it's a little bit closer, there's not as much space right there. We might not like that, so what I do is I click on this white direct selection tool, that's the second thing on the toolbar, and I click. And I click a couple times until I see these pale blue dots come up. It's important that you get pale blue and not the dark vivid blue that's that kind of around the edge with the much more vivid blue. That's not what you want. You want to click again so you get these pale blue. This is the text wrap outline. The other one are the contours of the picture, and if you move that, you will crop the picture, not the text wrapping. So you can move these dots about like that. If you go down right here on the toolbar and you click the Add Anchor Point tool, you can add points if you need that. You can also, if you right click on that, I don't really use pen tool, delete anchor point tool. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? It deletes the anchor points. And then there's the convert direction tool, which I will get to in a minute. It's a little more complicated. And then you just go back to direct selection to drag these about. And you can see that that's affecting that, and so that lets you kind of fix the outline that InDesign provided if you think it's a little bit off in places, which, you know, it's really quite impressively good, but it is a little bit off sometimes. So, what is the convert direction tool and why do you care? Well, essentially, you can see right now that this outline is curving around the outline of the person. And that's generally what you want for a lot of art. It's not just square, you know, it's curved or whatever, and you want the text wrapping to curve along with it. You really want the text wrapping to match the image pretty well. So, that anchor point, that convert direction tool is what lets you curve the outline and the text wrapping. say I delete this, and now I have that kind of straight line there. That's not really what I want. I want it to curve there. So I'm going to go and I'm going to click Add Anchor Point tool. And you can see there is my anchor point. I'm just going to move it out. And you can see, I'm zooming in, you can see these lines coming out. And they're kind of a tangent to the curve, right? And if I move those lines, if I make them longer, the curve changes. If I make them shorter, the curve becomes pretty much a straight line. If I put both of them all the way in to the point, then I would just have two straight lines. That's not what I want. So I'm going to go back to the Convert Direction tool, click on it, and then pull outwards to get those lines to come back. And when I tilt it, the curve changes, right? So it can be convex or concave, whatever I want. Sometimes it automatically comes with these lines, and sometimes it doesn't. It's not a big deal either way. If they're getting in your way, then you just click on this Direct Selection tool and drag those points back in all the way to the dot so it becomes a straight line. And if you want the Direction tool, you just go down here, you right click on this symbol, which may look like any of these pen tool symbols or the Convert Direction, depending on what you've last set it to. You just click on that, and then you drag out. Like I was showing, if you drag out one way, it's in a curve like that. I forget, is that convex or concave, whatever. But if you drag the other way, it kind of does this weird flippy thing. You normally don't want that, so you just kind of have to learn which way you want to be pulling it. And if you screw up, you just undo, Command Z, and then try it in the other direction. So yeah, that's the really simple version of moving text strapping in InDesign. I'm going to warn you though, I'm going to click on this again, do Command Alt W to bring back this text strap thing. It's now a user modified path, so it's not going to let you just like change the distance it is from the guy anymore without you kind of going back to that InDesign selected path and removing all of the manual edits you made. So try to get that spacing. I really suggest 1P0 unless you have a distinct reason why you want it to be more or less than that. Now I'm going to delete this and show you how I would do it manually. This is a pain. The new version of InDesign, InDesign 2021, is really, really fantastic. Which art was it? It's really, really fantastic in how it will text strap for you. So hopefully you shouldn't be doing too much of this manual stuff. But sometimes you do have to. So I'm going to go back to that Command Alt W or Window Text Strap, and I still want to click on that one with a circle. But what I want now is a user modified path. So I'm going to click on that Direct Selection tool on the toolbar. I can see I can either have it with the dark blue, or if I click again, with this light blue. What I want is the light blue. Remember, dark blue is about cropping and light blue is about text strapping. In this case though, because the text wrapping hasn't changed, they're just both in that same square border. But I am going to change text wrapping. I start out just kind of with those 4 points in the corner. So I'm going to go back here. Right now it's set to Convert Direction tool. So I'm going to right click and click Add Anchor Point. And I'm going to click around and add a bunch of points. I'm not really sure how many I'll need yet. So I'll just add a couple. I don't want them to get too in my way, and then I can always add or delete them later. You have to click pretty exactly on the line though, I will warn you. If you click a little bit off the line, it will not add a point. Alright, that's probably a good enough start. Now, what you do is with that Direct Selection tool, the second one, remember, not the first, you start dragging those light blue points so they're approximately the distance you want from the art. And you kind of trace a rough outline. I find it's easier to start with this pretty rough outline though. You don't really want to get too exact, and then you go back and make it better looking. You can see that every time I'm dragging the points, the text is adapting to fit. You can see I probably did have too many points there. That's okay. This art is going to text wrap very, very well in my opinion. Oops, it looks like that one had a curve. I don't really want a curve yet. And this one too. The reason this art like this text wraps very well is kind of because of the dynamicness of having most of one side, the left side, be the art, but then having text mostly flow around that just one skinny little hand, which just adds some interest and kind of some direction to the page, some flow. So yeah, if you're an artist watching this video, that's something that I might encourage you to think about when designing pages, is how they're going to fit in on the page. For writers, and page designers, you work with what the artist makes though, and so that's less of a big concern for you. And you can see I'm just going about dragging all these points. You can tell it's a little bit tedious. And then it looks like I did have too many points, so I'm going back to my Add Anchor Point tool, right-clicking and clicking Delete Anchor Point. And then I'm going to go back and adjust. I really want to make sure that the margin is pretty even. And then after this, I'm going to add curves. The curve lines can get in the way sometimes, so I don't normally like them when I'm doing preliminary text wrapping. It's like I don't like to have too many of these anchor points. But it looks like now I have a pretty good outline if I just click away. You can see I did a pretty good job, but it's a little awkward where there's like a straight line here. And there's maybe a little bit too much space there. So those are things you just kind of have to fuss with. Now I want to add those curves, so I go back to my Delete Anchor Point tool, right click and hit Convert Direction. I click on points and I drag out to make it curve. Now these curves aren't really perfect. Let me see that curve. I think I probably want to stick out a little bit more to mirror like where this head meets the neck. That curve is a pretty sharp one, so not too much there. Oops, wrong direction, just spin it around. That one I don't really want to curve because there is a sharp point there, but here I'm going to want to curve. Oops, wrong direction. And here too. Probably around the hand, right? The arm is pretty smooth looking, so I'm going to want it to curve there to kind of mirror the art, which is really the whole goal with all of this. I screwed that up, so I just went to direct selection so I could spin the direction around. And you can see I would do some more fussing with it, probably make the shoulder a little more, make it the text wrapping protrude a little more around the shoulder, make it stick out a little bit more right here at the waist. But that was a pretty good text wrapping job, you know, and it didn't take me that long. So I'd highly recommend playing with it. It will probably take you a lot longer the first couple times you do it, but with practice, a lot of practice, you'll get pretty fast at it. And you can see that really does help the page look much better. I wouldn't put it there, that's a little weird. But the principle is there. If I wanted to enlarge this then, I would probably just hold down Command Shift or Control Shift if I were on a Windows, and I can just drag it bigger, smaller, and the text wrapping changes with it. Super convenient. One final thing I want to talk about while I'm talking about text wrapping is how to deal with those super duper annoying words that get cut off weirdly. It's kind of hard to tell with the Latin, or fake Latin. I don't know if Lorem Ipsum is real Latin. So I'm going to copy in a story just so we can see those words that we're all going to actually recognize and be able to tell when they're cutting off weirdly. Story is not that long, so I'm going to pull it down. Okay, so we can kind of see, there are these annoying enters in the story that we're just going to delete really fast, because they kind of screw up how we look at the text wrapping. So this isn't really terrible. The weirdest part to me is probably where it says Create 2 Pro and then Vide is on its own line, and then low income is divided, so low in is on its own line. That's not great. So what I might do is go back, click on it, click on that direct selection tool, double click so I get to here, and then just fuss with the wrapping a little bit so that I can kind of remove that from being on its own line, move this down so that's not on its own line. And provide splitting up isn't perfect, but it's not going to be perfect, and so there's just a lot of fussing that you have to do. It's okay if it's not totally perfect, but we normally try to avoid really weird things. We want it to be readable. Readability is super duper important, as I think I've already said this video. Honestly, I don't remember anymore, but you want it to be readable when you're going around text wrapping, as well as kind of dynamically interesting. I think that's pretty much it as far as text wrapping goes around art. Again, this is probably going to take some practice to get used to dragging those dots around, figuring out all the different tools and how direction tool works to add those curves on the text wrapping dots. It takes some practice, and it's probably going to take you longer than that took, at least at first. I highly recommend, though, that at least while you're experimenting with InDesign before late nights or whatever, try text wrapping manually rather than using InDesign's function, because that will just give you a much greater degree of familiarity with all those, like moving those dots about and kind of adjusting the text wrapping, which will help you when you need to adjust InDesign's automatic ones. I really think that doing a couple of these manually is a very, very good practice. If a little tedious, it pays off. Alright, I think that was a pretty long video, so thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions, I know this is a harder topic, so please feel free to let me know.